Hi everyone, so I'm kind of on vacation right now. Speaking of which, we had a super fantabulous BFDI meetup in New York City, but I didn't want to stop making videos because I see a lot of new people are subscribing and you guys are awesome, and I just wanted to keep the momentum going, like I don't like these long hiatuses. So I thought, even though I don't have time to really work on new content for you, I can show you some content I have made in the past that many of you might not know about. So CarryKH is not my only channel. In fact, I might have like 4 or 5 channels total, and my brother has more. So you don't know all of them, so I'm just going to show you them now. One of those channels is called Abacaba, and it's focused on data visualization. So here's 10 videos where I just take some data posted by some other organization online and I visualize it in a cool way. So I'll put the link to this channel in the description. To be honest, I think this video here, the evolution of US girls' names bubbled, might have the highest production quality of all videos we've ever produced. Anyway, enough talking, let's get to the actual video. Oh, by the way, this amazing intro was animated by my brother, so credit where credit is due. I'm going to play it at a quarter speed, 1, so that the sound doesn't play so I can speak over it, though I could just turn the sound off. And 2, because 4 minutes is not enough for me to say everything I want to say about this video, because I spent months on this. I think more than half of my senior year of high school was spent on this. So I've got a lot to say. So first, here are the basics. On the Social Security website, you can download data for every single year from 1880 up to 2015, and that keeps going on as the years go on. The most popular baby names for babies born that year, and it shows every single name along with the count for how many babies had that name. And if I take that number and divide it by the total number of babies born that year, I can find percentages, which is what you see on all the bubbles here. And as you would intuitively expect, the size of the bubble is proportional to how many babies were born that year. So it's just it makes a lot of sense, right? The biggest names you see are the most common names you'd hear in society as babies are being born that year. So in 1895, oh, hold on, let me just go back a bit. So as the video goes on, you can kind of see trends changing, people's ideas of names changing as names go in and out of fashion. So for example, Ruth right here was kind of a semi-popular name, 46th place, pretty high up, but then Grover Cleveland, the president at the time, had a daughter named Ruth. And you can see everybody just jumped on the bandwagon. Look at this. Ruth at the bottom there. 19th up to 5th in 1 year. I called it before it happened because I memorized all that stuff. So I think it's really cool because this video merges history along with mathematics, because so many historical events affect how baby names are, right? You can see when the Great Depression happened. You can see when television shows started to really affect American culture because the names changed in that way. So that's how the history is in there. And then math, of course, the percentages, along with what people don't realize, the physics of the bubbles. The bubbles have to repel from each other so that they don't end up overlapping. And I had to fine-tune the function of repulsion so that I didn't get anything too strong or too weak. Obviously, if it's too weak, you'll end up with overlapping bubbles. But if it's too strong, you'll end up with vibrating bubbles that's, they're repelling each other and they bounce back and forth so much they just vibrate more and more and more until they go crazy. And you don't want that. But it's not as simple as that, because you also have to define the repulsion function according to the size of the bubble, right? So as the bubble increases, should the repulsion increase proportional to the radius or the area of the circle? And if you choose that wrong, you could end up with a bug that I got, which is where big bubbles were not repelling enough for their size, so 2 big bubbles could easily overlap, and then the ring of small bubbles around them, since the small bubbles outnumbered them, would keep those 2 big bubbles completely overlapping each other, and that's really bad. So that's a very technical bug, but it just shows that a lot of testing had to go into making this work well. Oh, also, if you want, you can buy posters at some link in the description of this video for every single birth year. So you can find your own birth year, your own gender, and your own personal preference of black or white backgrounds and buy that poster. So yeah, those are all available. So like with many parts of human society, things really speed up with the changing baby trends as you go into the end of the 20th century. Because like in the 1880s through like 1930, it's pretty slow. Not much is changing. You might have not even noticed any bubbles moving at all. But if I go back to 1880 and then come forward, you can see there's quite a big change if you just snap through that time. Like Dorothy went from not in the top 100 to 3rd place and is soon going to be 2nd. So that's a big change. But you'll see as we get further and further in time, things are going to speed up more and more. And that's just because, I guess parents are more in tune with culture and what other parents are naming their babies. So, because like there's the internet, whenever a celebrity names a baby, you instantly know about it. So yeah, things are going faster. So let me just talk about some questions that everybody asks me whenever they see my poster of this on my door at college. So one thing is, different spellings of the same name show up as different bubbles. So for example, let's see if I can find one. Oh, here's Catherine ending with INE at 59th and Catherine ending with YN at 81st. So those aren't combined, and there's a very good reason behind it. I think the whole data process is automated, so computers can easily tell if two spellings are different, but they can't tell if two spellings are supposed to sound the same pronunciation-wise. So just much simpler to just say, you know, anytime two names are spelled differently, they are different names. Oh, by the way, Betty just grew from like out of nowhere to 2nd. That's pretty cool. Betty, oh, another thing, diminutives of names are also not combined. So Betty is not going to be combined with Elizabeth, of course. So the year is 1930. What happened then? The Great Depression, right? People were pretty poor. They were depressed. They needed something to lift them out of that. So they turned on their TV. Well, I don't know if it was really TV back then, but they turned on whatever and watched a happy little girl named Shirley Temple, you know, sing happy songs. I don't really know what she did, but she made a lot of people happy because they started naming their children Shirley. And look at that, Shirley is growing fast. I actually found out that one of my neighbors born around this time was named Shirley. So this data isn't just a fantasy. It is real, okay? This has an impact and you will see it. And then another thing, I also have a boys version of this, of course, because there's 2 different data sets for each gender. And the biggest differences between the 2 genders is that girls' names go in and out of fashion much faster than boys' names. So there are some names that go in and out within like 30 years, whereas with boys, it usually takes a little longer. And there are even some boys' names that never go out of fashion. And I tried to find reasons behind this. I mean, I can only speculate, but I would guess one cause is that a lot of boys are named after their fathers, and like there's a long chain of them, like Samuel the Third, Samuel the Fourth, Samuel the Fifth. So that will contribute to boys having more stable name popularities. I don't think that explains the whole story. So it's clear that by 1945, the end of World War II, Mary is no longer miles above every other name. In fact, if you just look at the poster at a glance, you know, it looks like there's a lot of contenders for first place, and it's not so clear. Except, 1947, a song came out called Linda, and suddenly 100,000 babies were named in a single year. And Linda takes first place. The first ever name to dethrone another name in girls' history. So, yeah, like, this is the beginning of fast changes. We're soon gonna see names overthrow each other like every decade, and it is intense. Another trend I'd like to talk about is the streamlining of names. So often, a name will become popular, but then the streamlined form will overtake it in the future. So for example, here's Deborah, spelled with 7 letters, and it's 4th. But then here's Deborah with 5 letters, and it's much shorter, easier to remember, I guess. And it's quickly catching up. Like, I cannot overstate how quickly Deborah with 5 letters grew. It is the only name that went from under the top 100 to in the top 10 in only 2 years. And I know that I'm making a big deal out of this, but I still think it's quite cool to see these trends happen so quickly because they are in our real world. Whenever I browse baby name forum websites, I notice that the names that get the most hate are the ones that were invented in modern times, right? The classics like Mary, Susan, Karen, those have been around for thousands of years, so how could you hate them? But it turns out that a lot of names that we take for granted as classics are actually pretty modern. So the first example of that you'll see in this video is Wendy right here. It's growing pretty fast, and I think experts say that it comes from Peter Pan, which became popular in like 1905 or something. So that's only 100 years ago. The moral of the story here is that what you think is considered the classic list of names that you are allowed to use now, that's not necessarily what it's going to be in even like 50 years. It could change completely. And another example you'll see in a few decades from now is Madison. There are tons of Madison girls in my grade that I went to school with, but if you go back 10 years to before 1984, Madison was strictly a male name or a surname. It just so happened that in the 1984 movie Splash, a mermaid who didn't speak English wanted to choose a name for herself, so she looked at a street sign that said Madison. Back then, that was like a totally stupid name to choose for yourself, but she chose it, and just because of that, parents were like, oh, Madison is a really cute girl's name, I'll start using it. And then the snowball kept rolling. More and more girls were named Madison, and now we think of it as a strictly feminine name. So you never know what will happen in the next few decades. Now we're in the 70s, and counterculture is a thing, and maybe that is the cause for Mary falling rapidly down the charts. You remember how Mary was the only huge bubble back in the early 1900s? Now it's not even in the top 10. And its replacement, Jennifer, just passed 4%. I actually read somewhere that there are so many Jennifers born in the 1970s that there are support groups for girls named Jennifer because they feel like they have no identity. Now, that was just like an anecdote and there's no evidence, so I can't be sure of that. But like looking at this, 1 in 25 women were named Jennifer. So now that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about coincidences and how certain demographics will name their babies more like others, I could easily imagine a class of like 20 people having like 5 Jennifers. So, now I think it's a good time to mention another fascinating trend that I see with these babies' names. It happens more with girls than for boys, but it's pretty cool. It's called the 100-year trend, and what it means is after a name starts to fall from fashion and, go into obscurity, it'll start to rise again 100 years after its last peak. So, for an example, Sarah was pretty big in the 1880s. Over the next 50 years or so, it started to fall, and then I think at its lowest point, it was about 100th place. And then around the 60s and 70s, it started to rise again because all the Sarahs born in the 1880s were, I don't want to be harsh, but they were dying off. So that parents no longer associated the name Sarah with old grandmas. They just saw Sarah as a cool vintage name that had this, very elegant, old-fashioned sound to it. So they named their baby Sarah, and it rose up to 5th place. You'll see later 3rd place. And so by the 1980s and 90s, it was one of the top girls' names again. Oh, but Sarah managed to split its spellings with the H and without the H, so it could rank even higher. The same trend, just shifted about 20 years later, happens with Emma. Emma was also really popular in the 1880s through like the 1930s and started to fall after then. And it fell really, really far, like down to 400th place or something. And you can see it's starting to rise now, but it will rise even further thanks to shows like Friends, which had a baby named Emma in 2001, and Emma Watson from Harry Potter. I'm only speculating again, but those seem like likely causes. That, along with the fact that all the grandma Emmas were gone, suddenly made parents think, oh, Emma is a nice name. So you can see it's rising really fast. I was born in 1997, so this is my year. And I would totally agree that Emily was the most popular name that year because there's so many Emilys in my grade. Back to the 100 years trend. An interesting result of that is that by the year 2000, we have a lot of names that are returners from the past, such as Hannah, Emma, now 13th, Sarah, Olivia, what else? Isabella, and so on. We also have all the really hip, trendy names, like, let's see if you can see it. Nevaeh, which is heaven spelled backward, popularized by some rock singer in 2000, is rising. And that's like completely new, along with like Madison, like I mentioned before, now 3rd. It was 2nd at some point. Kayla, maybe Lauren, Alexis, these very modern names. So we have a mixture separated by a century of names, and you can split them into 2 groups. So just looking at the top 10 list now, you have Emma, old 100-year cycle name, Isabella, old 100-year, Emily, Olivia. I guess all of these are 100-year cyclers. Madison's new, Abigail's old, Chloe's new. Well, it's not really new, but it only became mainstream recently. Mia's old. So 2 groups of names, but they're coexisting in this bath of all regions of time. So, in 2008, Emma takes the throne from Emily to become the most popular girl's name. But you know what came out in 2009? The first Twilight movie, featuring Bella Swan. So of course, Isabella is going to rise to first place. But Isabella was not popular solely because of Twilight. Nothing can be solely caused by culture. Like, Isabella was already on the rise, and things like movies, TV shows, celebrities, they can only add to that rise. It's very hard for celebrities, blah, 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 to reverse an already decreasing tide. So if a baby name is already going out of fashion, like Justin for boys is right now, no amount of popular celebrities is ever going to reverse that. Like Justin Bieber, Justin Timberlake, like, you know, these are like super famous, but it doesn't matter, Justin is still going out of style. So yeah, you can only boost, you cannot reverse. Oh, my brother Michael also animated this cool outro, very 3D. Okay, I don't know if that was enjoyable for you to listen to, but I guess I'll just go through the boys' names video also to complete the pair. Oh, hold on, one last thing. So, I'm a college student, and my YouTube videos do get AdSense revenue, but AdSense is very unreliable, and it could just fall off a cliff one day and I wouldn't be able to fix it. So if you want to support what I do and just help me, you know, make videos better or more regularly, now you can help support me on Patreon. Right now my page is almost completely empty, but I'm gonna fill it out with like images and perks for supporting me. And yeah, I don't have much of a plan for this, but this is just like, if you want to show your support, you can. You can pledge as little or as much as you want. I upload a variety of content. So I have this rule that if you watch X% of my videos, then if you think those videos are each worth N dollars, then pledge X times N, if that makes sense. So if you watched only my Marvel Race videos, which are like 20%, and you think each one is worth $5, then only pledge $1 per video. It makes sense, you know, just do what's reasonable for you, and you don't have to support at all. I'll still be making videos for free for everyone. This is just for the people who really like my stuff and want to help me keep doing that. And if you do that, I will thank you so much. You will change everything. Every little bit matters. So thank you if you do that, and I'll see you in the next video.